What in the world is the Georgia Worship Choir, and why should I care? Are you a choir based in the European country of Georgia? Are you a choir in the U.S. that worships the state of Georgia? Silly as it sounds, those are fair questions given our name. Why are you a community choir and not a church choir? What's the deal? All valid questions, and all of which have been asked of us. So, with this first podcast episode, we're going to establish who we are and why we exist. Let's go. We are the Georgia Worship Choir, and we're on a journey to parts unknown. Want to join us? See, we believe there is still a place for choirs in modern worship, and that God still uses choirs to bless people. But with fewer churches having choirs, where is a singer to go? So we're asking the question, is it possible for a community worship choir to exist? Would total strangers with nothing more in common than a love for singing and a love for Jesus come together to form a choir? That's the grand experiment. That's the journey we're on. Come along with us, and together we shall see. When we were in the process of coming up with our first logo, I hired someone online for the task and gave him what I thought were clear and complete instructions about what we were looking for in a logo. One of those instructions was that we wanted it to contain something that would reflect where we were based and where we lived. However, I made the mistake of not making that location clear. So he came back with a logo that included the national flag of the European country of Georgia. Now, it's a great flag of a beautiful country, but it's just not us. So that was yet another lesson I got to add to my collection about the dangers of assuming. But on the positive side, if you're living in the country of Georgia and you want to start a worship choir, I've got a great looking logo for you. So DM me and I'll cut you a deal. Hi, I'm Dean Oliver, and I'm the founder and director of the Georgia Worship Choir, as in the state of Georgia in the United States of America. And this is the very first episode of our brand new podcast that will be available in video form on YouTube and in audio form on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your other podcast. And if you haven't done so already, please go back and listen to our podcast trailer so that you'll have more context for who we are and what we're doing. But before we go any further, I want to share this disclaimer. You do not have to be a musician or a singer to follow our journey. I think this could be fun for you just from the perspective of someone watching a story unfold. I once got hooked on a podcast that chronicled in real time the startup of a tech company. And although I'm a bit of an entrepreneur, nothing I've done comes close to starting a tech company that required the investment of millions of dollars from venture capitalists, not to mention developing a product that consumers would want. But even though I couldn't personally relate to their experiences, I found myself enjoying just being able to take the journey with them from a distance because of how they provided an audio journal of the rocky road to the launch of their company. So that's what we're hoping our podcast will become for people. Now, if you're a musician, a singer, or someone with a strong faith in God, then I think I can promise you that you'll love following our story. There's going to be a lot in our journey that's going to resonate with you. But even if you're not any of those things, I think there will be things in our story that you'll enjoy as well. And if nothing else, just stick around for the humor, because we laugh a lot in the Georgia Worship Choir, and most of the time we're laughing at ourselves and all of the mistakes we're making. So stick around for all of those "I can't believe they did that" moments that happen all the time. Now, let's back up and give you some context for how we even got here in the first place. And to do that, I want you to use your imagination for a moment. Imagine that you're a teenager who loves music and enjoys singing in your high school chorus. You love the camaraderie of singing with your friends. I mean, think about it. You get to leave trigonometry with your head spinning a little and go into the choir room in the middle of your school day to, of all things, just sing with your friends. I mean, how cool is that? And because you love singing with friends so much, you continue doing that when you get to college. Now, you're not a music major, your major is something else entirely. But you join the college chorus because, again, you just love singing and making beautiful music with your friends. And then, of course, all the trips you get to take performing for people in other cities, states, or even countries, well, that's just bonus. But then you graduate and start, as my kids like to call it, adulting. And you get your first apartment, your first job, meet some new friends. Maybe you're in a serious relationship and all is going well. But somewhere along the way, you realize that there are things that you miss about college. And one of them is singing. So you start thinking about how you can have that experience again. How could choir become a part of your life again? Now, assuming you're not a professional singer, as an amateur singer, you would typically have two options. One, join a community choir. Or two, join a church choir. Or even both. So I guess that's the third option. Let's say because God is important to you and you love singing about and to Him, you choose to go the church choir route. Now that's great if this is any time before the year 2000, because you'd have a wide range of options because the vast majority of local churches had choirs back then. But unfortunately, it's not before the year 2000, and it's actually 2025, and you're surprised to discover that churches that still have a choir are actually in the minority. You're having a hard time finding a church with a vibrant choir ministry, which is puzzling because high schools and colleges still have choirs. So why are they absent in churches? Why? Because more and more churches are doing away with choirs. Even churches that have had a long, rich history of choral singing, they've ended their choir ministries. Now, the reasons for this are many: lack of resources or lack of leadership or a shift to modern worship, and they don't think choir fits into that style. Well, we're not going to get into those reasons in this episode, but count on it that we will come back and discuss these reasons in future episodes. But long-established churches have discontinued their choirs. And then you have all the newer modern churches that start out with the understanding they will never have a choir, and the reasons for this are varied as well. And look, we at GWC are not trying to criticize the older churches who have disbanded choirs or the newer churches who never make an attempt to have one. And we're certainly not against modern worship. The majority of GWC singers come from churches with modern worship. They just don't have choirs. And we're not going to stand in judgment of that. We're trusting that they are doing what they feel like is best for their particular ministry environment. They're fulfilling the vision that they feel like God has given them, and that's fine. But we are concerned that because there are fewer choirs in churches today, that means there are literally thousands of talented singers attending churches each week who have no opportunity to use their talents. Because there is no choir for them to sing in, and because the few vocalists their church may use on a praise team are semi to full-on professionals, members of a congregation, many of them highly trained musicians, may never have a chance to sing anything other than the 3 or 4 songs that they sing with the church on Sunday mornings. And although that's great and very meaningful, it's not the same as singing in a choir. We at GWC don't like that we're in this situation where fewer and fewer people will get to enjoy the amazing experience of singing praise to God in a large choir. It's an experience that's hard to describe, and one that literally has to be experienced to be understood. I remember clearly when God gave me the vision for a community worship choir. I had just conducted my local church choir in an Easter musical on a Palm Sunday night, and it was one of those powerful, emotional experiences that happens so often when singing God's praises within a choir setting. If you've experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just one of those times in your life when you feel like the presence of God is so near, and He's completely in the praise that's being lifted up. And you look over and see friends that you're singing with, and you just feel something unique in that worship setting. That's the kind of experience we had that Palm Sunday night. And as I was alone on my drive back home, I remembered thinking, it is such a shame that there are so many people who have never experienced what it's like to sing God's praises in a large choir setting like that. And the immediate thought that I felt like God gave me was, then do something about it. To which I quickly responded by thinking, quick, Dean, think about something else. Change the subject. But you probably know how that went. God had spoken, and I could not unhear what He said. Now, it's not for lack of trying. I tried in the days and weeks following that experience to act as though I had a choice in the matter. And I began praying in those days, okay, God, suppose I was to do something about it. What would that look like? And in the following days and weeks, He helped me see something that I thought was beautiful, and it quickly captured my imagination. Instead of waiting for churches to come back around to the potential of choir, which I do believe is going to happen one day, by the way, even in modern churches. But until that happens, He helped me see a way to provide this worship choir experience for people outside of the church in the form of a community choir. Now, as you know, community choirs are not new. There are community choirs that have existed for a long time singing pop music, Broadway music, classical music, even barbershop music, you name it. There are those kind of choirs all over the place, except praise and worship music. The kind of worship that a lot of us are already singing in our local churches. And immediately I wondered why that had not happened already. Or maybe it had, and I just didn't know about it. So I and some friends began researching, and quite frankly, hoping we would find someone somewhere who was already doing this so that we could just contact them and beg them to be able to copy their process. We found a few that came close, but none that were doing it the way we envisioned. And I'll get into those details in a future episode. So we finally realized that we were on our own. Maybe no one was doing a community worship choir because people had tried it and realized it didn't work, or no one had tried it before. So we had no way of knowing whether or not this would work. But the only way we were going to find out was to just start one and see. So that's what we did. And back in 2021, some friends and I started a group called the Georgia Worship Choir. And we adopted this mission statement. The Georgia Worship Choir is a community choir of diverse Christians united by their love for Jesus and passionate about creating worship experiences that inspire people to draw closer to Him. That's who we are, and that's the journey we're on. We formed GWC as a 501c3 nonprofit back in the summer of 2021, and we started singing in the fall of 22. So we've got a lot to catch you up on. I wish, like that tech startup podcast I mentioned earlier, that we could have started this podcast at the very beginning, but our hands were too full getting this rocket off the ground. But now we feel the time is right to share our story with the world so other people could be a part of what we're doing. And though you couldn't follow us in real time these last couple of years, rest assured we will be going back and revisiting the highs and lows of those days in future episodes. And lastly, one of the reasons we want to invite you to take this journey with us is because there's a lot about this grand experiment that we have yet to figure out. And our hope is that you may be able to help us figure out some things. Some of what we have done worked from the very start and were tremendous successes. But we've had our share of failures too, and we'll share those with you down the road. We have a lot to talk to you about, but as we close out this episode, there are 5 ways that you could join our journey right now. Number 1, subscribe to us or follow us wherever you're listening or watching. This is an audio podcast on places where you typically listen to podcasts, but the video version will also be available on YouTube. So follow us on one or both of those platforms so that you'll be informed of when new podcasts are published. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like, ring, and comment. Click the thumbs up like button, provided that you liked the episode, of course. Ring the bell so that you'll be notified when new episodes are published. And certainly comment below. The ability for people to leave us comments is one of the reasons we're so excited about this podcast. So all of that was the first way you could help us in this journey. Number 2, sign up for our newsletter on our website, georgiaworshipchoir.com. That way you'll be informed of all the happenings of the choir in between podcast episodes. Number 3, sing with us. If you're in the Metro Atlanta area, log on to our website to see the latest information about new singer registration and plan to sing with us. Number 4, support us, if you can, with a recurring or one-time financial gift. Being totally open here, one of the tremendous disadvantages of not being a choir associated with a single church is that we don't have the benefit of a church supporting us financially. We are an independent 501c3 nonprofit, which means we have to find our own support. And without question, that's been the number one challenge since our inception. So anything that you could do to help us financially would be a huge help. You can give on our website, georgiaworshipchoir.com. And 5th and finally, but most importantly, pray for us. We're big believers in prayer here at GWC because we've seen God answer our prayers both as a choir and as individual singers. So if all you can do is pray for us, then really that's the best thing you could do for us. So for now, we'll leave it with this thought. We have answered the question, will anybody want to sing in this? And the answer is a resounding yes. After just 2 years of rehearsing and performing, we've had 114 people sing with us so far, coming from over 80 churches in the Metro Atlanta area. People still love singing God's praises and singing those praises together in the form of a choir. I tell the choir often that yes, anybody can sing as an individual, but we can't sing in harmony with ourselves. We need each other to make harmony, and some of the best harmony you'll ever hear will come from a choir. God still loves choirs, and He still uses them to bless people. And I hope you'll be one of those that is blessed by our journey. Well, thank you, friend, for joining us for this episode, and we hope to see you in the next one. But until then, keep singing.